If you have IBS and your mom or your dad or grandma or your sister have IBS, does that mean that IBS is genetic? Well, yes and no. How's that for an annoying opening? Hi, I'm Dr. Stephen Wangen, the founder and medical director of the IBS Treatment Center, and I once had IBS, and I later learned that I was actually put on this earth to help people solve IBS, believe it or not. And if you find this video helpful, please like it below by clicking on the thumbs up. Now, is IBS genetic or hereditary? Here's the short answer. IBS is not a genetic disorder. But, and this is a big but, the causes for IBS can be genetic or inherited. All right, you're thinking, okay, wise guy, what does that mean? Well, it means that there are things that can cause IBS that are genetic, but there's not a single gene or a set of genes for IBS. There's no IBS gene, right? So there is no IBS genetic testing either, and there never will be. At least there might be, but there's never going to be any IBS genetic testing that's any good or that's actually going to solve your IBS. Now let's back up a little bit so that we can explain all of this. IBS is an umbrella term, right? It's not a single condition with a single cause. It's a dumping ground for digestive problems that your doctor doesn't understand. And there are literally hundreds of causes for the relatively small number of symptoms that are placed under this umbrella of IBS. It would be like asking, is fatigue genetic? Well, no one asks this, right? Because we all know, or we should know, that there are hundreds of reasons that you can be tired and have fatigue. And the same is true for IBS. Now, does IBS run in families? Well, again, the answer is yes and no. And I know that's super annoying, but the truth is usually messy, right? Now, does IBS run in families? Well, IBS runs everywhere, not just in families. So consider this, IBS is very common. It's a really common condition, and around 10% of the population suffers from IBS. So there's a pretty good chance that someone in your family, someone else is going to have IBS when 1 out of every 10 people has it, right? Whenever 1 out of every 10 people has something, then you're bound to know a few people who also have it. That's just how IBS is. It's one of those conditions. But what if you have several people in your family that have IBS? Now, why would that happen when it's not a genetic condition? And there are several reasons for this. The most common reason that you might have several people in your family with digestive problems is because food intolerances are largely genetic. It's likely that no one ever told you this before, but it's true. Food intolerances are very genetic. So let's take, for example, gluten intolerance. The entire medical industry knows that this is a genetic problem and that it's hereditary, but they don't talk about it much, so you probably don't know, but it's pretty well understood. However, the same is true for other food intolerances. For example, reactions to dairy or to egg or to soy or to corn or even things like cane sugar. I mean, the list goes on and on. Those are also very genetic. And everyone in your family is basically eating the same thing, same types of foods when you stop and think about it, right? They might be preparing it differently. They might like, pizza versus hamburgers or whatever. But I'll bet that a huge majority of the foods that you're all eating are made from the same primary ingredients, from wheat and from dairy and from eggs and from corn and from soy and a handful of other things, because that's what our foods are made out of. So everybody's eating that unless they're taking great pains to avoid them. And your grandparents basically eating the same fundamental foods too. And that's the genetic part of IBS. You get those food reactions from your family. And if you don't do anything about it, and they didn't do anything about it, then you can have generations of problems with things such as IBS. Now, the good news is that you can change that it's not inevitable having IBS. Now, are you born with IBS? Well, not exactly. Babies can have IBS, and it's really not all that common, right? For example, how many babies have explosive diarrhea? Well, many, right? Lots. but it's not normal, it's not healthy. And just because it's common doesn't mean it should be that way. So doctors don't usually call it IBS at that age, but that's still what it is. And if those babies have, for example, a dairy allergy and they're being fed a dairy formula, then they can have digestive problems. They can also get exposed to foods that mom eats via her breast milk. So you aren't born with IBS, but you can get it right away, depending on what's happening with your diet. Now, there's another hereditary part of all this that I haven't mentioned yet, and it's your microbiome. You inherit your gut microbiome. And the microbiome is all the bacteria that inhabits your digestive tract. And it has to come from somewhere, and you get it from your parents and from the environment in which you live, which is the environment in which they live, right? So how good is their microbiome? And that depends on a whole lot of things like their diet and their lifestyle and medications, all kinds of things. And as you can imagine, a lot of people don't have very healthy microbiomes to pass on to their children. So will you have IBS forever? Now, this is the good part. IBS is not inevitable. It's not fate. It is within your control, but it may be difficult to find the help that you need to stop it. IBS can go on for many, many years, and I've seen people who've suffered with IBS for 20 or 30 years or more. And that's frustrating for them, but it's probably not for lack of trying. Now, remember when I said that there were hundreds of causes of IBS. I wasn't just kidding around. I wasn't exaggerating. There are literally hundreds of causes of IBS. And when you go to your doctor, even the gastroenterologist, how many causes do you think they're testing for or even aware of? And it's not hundreds. It's just a handful, and that results in a limited number of treatments based mostly on your symptoms, not on the cause of the problem. And you think, oh, but I had all these tests run. Yeah, most of the tests that they're running are to rule out other things, not to actually sort out your IBS. So when they can't help you, you may feel like you're one in a million or that you're the rare case that just can't be helped. But you're just like most of their other IBS patients who still have IBS. So how do you figure it out? You see an IBS specialist. An IBS specialist is someone who only treats IBS, right? They will help you do the detective work to sort out all of these hundreds of causes of IBS. And that's how you beat IBS, because it's not something that you have to suffer with just because lots of other people in your family have suffered with IBS. You can be different. You can get better, and then you can show them how to do it too. Does your family suffer with IBS? If you'd like to hear more interesting content like this, please like and subscribe to my channel below. Thanks for listening.